Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our council meeting tonight. What a beautiful day this was after a long weekend. And this is the 22nd meeting of the 144th Council of the Corporation of the City of St. Thomas. And I'd like to welcome our new city manager, Michael. Michael, good to see you here tonight. It's going to be fun. I think you're going to like this group. Maybe not the mayor so much, but the rest of the group are really a lot of fun. Any disclosures of interest from any of the members? Seeing none, we'll go to minutes.
I have a motion that the minutes of the meeting held on May 13th, 2024 be confirmed. Moved by Councillor Peters, seconded by Councillor Gibson.
Questions or comments on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Council will now resolve itself into committee of the whole to deal with the following business. First committee is strategic direction and development. First item relates to zoning bylaw amendment for 30 South Edgeware Road. I have a motion that report PD 1724 relating to the zoning bylaw amendment for 30 South Edgeware Road be received for information. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Wiki.
Questions or comments? Councillor Peters?
Thanks very much, Your Worship. I just want to be on the record on this one, along with a few others. 30 South Edgeware, 59 Walnut Street, and Shaw Valley. This council, maybe not unanimously, but this council made a decision of what we believed was in the best interest of the community and that we live in. And those three applications were turned down. And here we go, an unelected, appointed body who has no knowledge and understanding of what we believe as duly elected officials is best for our community. This unelected appointed body overrules our decision, and it frustrates me. And I just needed to say my piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Further questions or comments? Councillor Herbert?
Thank you, Worship. I echo the comments of Councillor Peters. It just seems like every time we try to fight something, we lose it to the tribunal in Toronto. So it's kind of frustrating for us, or for myself, to fight these things with good reasons, we think, and we lose consecutively. So it's just frustrating for me to see that happen. So thank you.
Don't give up your spirit, Councillor Herbert. Further questions or comments? Councillor Wookie?
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm hoping that Mr. Pompili, for the people in the public who wouldn't have read this report, can put some perspective on like what we're being asked to do here and the kind of the process and why we're fuming a little bit here.
Okay, well, this is a piece of property that came to us for rezoning. Mr. Pompili can come up, but I'll start. Came to us for rezoning a year and a half ago, I guess it was. This council discussed it a lot and said that may be too crowded on that lot, and we sent it away with a no. Mr. Pompili, jump in now.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship, and thank you for the promotion to councillor.
No, no, trust me, it's not a promotion, just so you know. Yes.
Sure. No, as council is aware and raised this evening, this matter was referred to the OLT. The OLT heard it. It was actually a very exhaustive hearing. It was the board member was not someone who has a planning background. So I believe as a result of that, he gave it quite a wide breadth of consideration in terms of allowing all parties to really have their say and have their opinions heard and considered by this board member. The hearing went on longer than originally we had thought or intended or felt it would. And the decision, also rendering the decision, took quite some time. So there was obviously a lot of thought put into that. And when that decision was rendered, I believe also maybe because of the experience of the board member or following other processes, the Planning Act really does allow that the tribunal member can either approve the amendment and it's approved, or they can direct council to amend the bylaw. In this case, they chose to have council amend the bylaw, direct council to amend the bylaw. That's why it's here before you. Other ones, like the ones that Councillor Peters mentioned earlier, those ones were just approved by the board and who ordered the amendment, and they made it. That's really the only difference here in this case.
Thank you. Further discussion or comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? Noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. And next item. And next item relates to the coordinated collaborative response, a protocol for responding to reports of unsheltered homelessness. We do have the Manager of Housing Stability Services here to make a brief presentation relating to homelessness in St. Thomas, after which I do have a motion to receive the report.
Super. Ms. Nielsen, great to have you here today. And this question came up last week. And your director handled it well and said, wait till next week. They've got all the information. So
Perfect. Thank you, Your Worship. If I could just get some technical support up here to support me in sharing my screen. Perfect. Thank you very much for the support. Good evening, Your Worship and Council, and welcome to our new city manager. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present information and an update on our local response to homelessness with you this evening. I'd like to start by acknowledging that the negative impact that homelessness has on people's lives here in St. Thomas is no different than what people are experiencing right across our country. Homelessness is a socially and systemically complex issue, and it is the result of deep historic failures that have accumulated over decades, such as colonialism and divestments in affordable housing. These examples, combined with other social inequities such as deep poverty, intergenerational trauma, and the current housing and cost of living crisis have cumulatively increased housing instability for Canadians at a higher rate than we've ever experienced before. As you can imagine, surviving these co-occurring experiences is not easy. Surviving often means compromising one's physical and mental health and can lead to increased rates of substance use and misuse, a reality that we see in the lives of some of our most vulnerable community members today. Although these realities can be grim, and I recognize that we still have our work ahead of us, I'm happy to report that in St. Thomas Elgin, we are making headway as a community in our ongoing commitment to reduce homelessness locally. Over the last couple of years, with the mayor's and council's leadership and support, we have collaboratively worked incredibly hard across service providers and sectors to incorporate best practices and new resources to support people experiencing homelessness, and we have seen a difference. We've seen a difference on our streets, and more importantly, we've seen a difference in the lives of the people we're supporting. Part of this work includes shifting our emergency shelter, the Inn, to operate as low barrier with a focus on housing in order to better meet the needs of its guests, which sometimes includes people with complex needs. And their efforts to shift to low barrier are working. People who have not accessed our emergency shelter in the past now do. I won't elaborate in too much detail about the Inn's low barrier practices, as the Inn's leadership will be presenting to council on June 3rd. But at a high level, some of the low barrier practices that are making a difference includes moving away from shelter restrictions and towards shelter breaks, and building in smaller sleeping spaces known as flex rooms for people with complex needs that may be struggling to sleep in dormitory spaces. And probably most importantly, making these services available 24/7. As noted earlier, as a result of our collective community efforts, right now we have less people experiencing unsheltered homelessness and less street-involved activity than we have previously seen in the past few years. However, there still are people who may experience unsheltered homelessness temporarily for a number of reasons. Some of those reasons may include feeling unsafe at the shelter, not wanting to separate from personal belongings that exceed the shelter's ability to store them, or we're receiving a restriction from the shelter, which is typically tied to violence or compromising the safety of others. In order to respond to the needs of people living unsheltered, multiple service areas throughout the city have collaborated to develop our coordinated collaborative response, which I will elaborate on very shortly. To give you some context around the scope of need, this slide provides you with a high-level overview of our by name list data. Through a thoughtful and meaningful referral process, people experiencing homelessness across the spectrum, for example, people experiencing sheltered homelessness, unsheltered, couch surfing, etc., are identified at multiple touch points and added to the list. Currently in our municipality, which includes both the city of St. Thomas and Elgin County, there are approximately 150 to 120 individuals on our by name list. The larger pie provides you with an overview of our data since implementation in July of 2020 and demonstrates that over 65% of all people identified have been supported to secure housing. The gray, the gray area of the pie identifies who is still actively homeless, and the yellow section identifies who moved to inactive, meaning that they haven't touched the system for 3 months or longer. The two smaller pies separate out for you the data between the city of St. Thomas and then by Elgin County. So just flipping back to our coordinated collaborative response, which is also known as the CCR. At a high level, the CCR provides a protocol for responding to people living unsheltered. It has been developed and monitored in partnership across city service areas and prioritizes the safety of everyone involved, including people who are living unsheltered, participating city staff, and the surrounding community, given that temporary shelters on land not designed for human habitation can lead to public health and safety and environmental concerns. Examples of those safety concerns include and are not limited to victimization, open fires, biohazardous waste buildup, food contamination, and the impact of inclement weather. The CCR also operates within existing local bylaws, which hold all people accountable to the same expectations. Since implementation in 2021, there have been some service changes within our community. The St. Thomas Police Service has implemented the Community Response Unit, known as our Special Constables, which has had a very positive impact in our community through both building connections with vulnerable people and being a physical presence in our downtown core. Additionally, over the spring of this year, street outreach services have changed from operating through CMHA Thames Valley to St. Thomas Elgin Social Services. This change is in response to a reduction in street activity in our community and provided the opportunity for us to reduce the cost of the service and enhance collaboration between city participating departments. Our special constables and our street outreach staff are often the first point of contact with people who are living unsheltered and remain a point of contact throughout the relationship through trust building. And there is a focus on creating healthy pathways towards supports and services, including housing, and again, building those relationships. This includes informing people that they are unable to set up temporary shelter on public land. It includes confirming that supports and services are available and working together to help people pack up and access those supports and services. If people are unable to access supports and services, all efforts are made to mitigate barriers and create connections. If people are unwilling to pack up and access supports and services, bylaw attempts to provide notice to vacate the area. If the site remains active, support from St. Thomas Police Services may be requested. And it's important to note that supports through our Community Resource Unit, as well as our Social Services Street Outreach Program, remain available all the way through the process. In most, if not all circumstances, issues are resolved at the first point of contact with our special constables and with our social services staff. Once people have left the area, city services, including parks or roads, depending on location, attend to return the area to its original site. Encampments on private land can be reported to police at any time if the landowner is concerned that it's a trespassing matter. And during each step of the CCR, a minimum of 2 staff attend at any time. If anyone feels unsafe, all engagement stops. Any reports or concerns of fire or public safety are reported to the fire department or police department immediately. Looks like I've lost my screen sharing there. Sorry about that. Penny?
We have an expert for that.
Thank you. I just have a couple more slides and very quick notes for each one. It's a bit of a smaller view, but I think we'll continue if that's okay.
Great.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So our ability to be frontline on the streets, meeting people where they're at, provides us with the ability to know who in our community is in need of support and knowledge about exactly what the specifics are of those needs. One of the ways that we match people to supports is through another sector known best practice called coordinated access. Coordinated access is a biweekly meeting facilitated by the YWCA that brings together multiple service providers to review our by name list and connect people to available resources. I did provide a link in this slide that can give you more information about coordinated access systems if anyone is interested or curious to learn more. So I hope with this slide, I haven't made the mistake of leaving anyone out. I wanted to just quickly demonstrate and emphasize for you how many community partners are a part of this collaborative work to support our most vulnerable. This includes key stakeholders such as yourselves, nonprofit organizations, grassroots initiatives, multiple municipal services, and volunteer groups and more, all full of caring and committed people who are dedicated to improving the lives of others and leaving no one behind in the process. As council is aware, we are a Built for Zero Canada community. This slide outlines our timeline of our Built for Zero achievements to date, which keeps growing, which is wonderful. And with our most recent achievement of being recognized for reducing chronic homelessness in February of this year. So just a quick shameless plug on behalf of our municipality. This achievement was celebrated in a recent Bright Spot that confirmed that we had reduced chronic homelessness by 30% over a 4-month period, which is remarkable and is not the experience of many Canadian communities right now where homelessness is on the rise. At both a provincial and a federal level, St. Thomas Elgin is seen as a leading community in its response to homelessness and a beacon of light for others. Then just lastly, to quickly wrap up, looking ahead, we intend to keep this momentum going by continuing to grow our local stock of affordable and supportive housing as quickly as possible. And through continual improvement of our system and its best practices, all in an effort to support us in achieving functional zero. Thank you.
Questions or did you want to?
Your worship, if I could just read the motion that report SESS 1024 relating to coordinated collaborative response, a protocol for responding to reports of unsheltered homelessness be received for information. Moved by Councillor Baldwin Sands, seconded by Councillor Herbert.
All right, questions or comments of Ms. Nielsen, Councillor Clark?
Thanks. The question or call that I had with the process was involving private property. So the owner had been told to call the police because his property was being used as a campsite. When he called the police, he was informed that they were busy and that they would get back to him as soon as they could, which he understood. And a couple hours later, they called and were ready to accompany him to the property. They said they needed him present and that he was to deliver the bad news. And so that's kind of the frustration, was that he's just wondering if there's a way that the process could be looked at, because if you're away, if you're working, you can't get back to the property when the police are there. And so then the people continue on where they are for a number of days until you can connect. So he's just wondering if there is something that could be done in the protocol where the CR unit could approach the people even if it was on his private property, or if he could provide written notice to the police ahead of time that anytime the unit saw people on his property, that he didn't have to then be present, and the process could be almost the same as it was for public property as private property.
I guess that's a great question. If the landowner says, please come help me and follow the rest of your protocol, can they?
Thank you for your worship. To you, Councillor Clark, thank you for your question. I don't believe there's anyone here on behalf of St. Thomas Police Services that could speak directly to answer your question, but I would be very happy to take that question and inquiry away, have a discussion across the leadership team that support the CCR protocol and be able to provide information back to you in the near future.
Great. I saw Councillor Gibson's hand.
Thank you, Worship. Danielle, I just like to say thank you for the report and that the where the city is leading in this area is very across the area here that I'm getting friends and family that call and say, how does St. Thomas do it? I said, well, we got a great team, not only just council, but also staff. And I'm just impressed. And they are too. So be proud of your work. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baldwin Sands, then Councillor Herbert.
Thank you. Again, well done for this report. I appreciate and understand the complex nature that you continue to face each and every day. And as such, I will continue to support you and your staff and your department, because the more work we do, it also shines a light on what more work needs to be done. So I thank you for that. I am hoping to have a quick question and then on the long weekend, for example, when some of these instances go out, where do we go during a long weekend? Could you answer that? And then I have one request.
Thank you, Councillor Baldwin Sands, for your remarks and yours as well, Councillor Gibson. Happy to answer your question. So our community resource unit, the special constables, are in operation 6 days a week. So that would extend itself into weekends. Our emergency shelter, of course, is 24/7, no matter what, regardless of any holiday hours. So they are able to respond in a crisis situation if needed, and where appropriate for them to provide support. And then the crisis line for CMHA is also 24/7, regardless of any holidays that may impact those hours. Pardon me, they're 7 days a week. They're not 24/7. I believe their hours are 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and they can be contacted as well for anyone who might be in a crisis or experiencing a challenge.
And I also want to have you recognized for the work that you have been doing with the coordinated effort with all of the services that are coming together to make these things happen in our community. I was hoping that we could take that bright spot that you put up on the for us to view, if we could also share that with the public at large and put it out on our city's website and our city's social media and Facebook page, just that one. It says so much in a very, in that one picture. I was hoping you could share that and look for your comments on that, please.
Thank you again, Councillor Baldwin Sands. Happy to share. We did post it on some of our socials, but we can certainly look to broaden the impact of how far we're able to share it. And while I'm very deeply appreciative and humbled by acknowledgement of my work in the community, I feel like it's really important to share that this is the result of all of us, and that we cannot underestimate the impact that having a council and a mayor that understands the need for affordable housing has in our community, as well as city staff. My director does so much behind the scenes that she probably doesn't get the same type of recognition for, so I'm going to give her some. And all of our community partners, everybody is participating in the success in St. Thomas, and that's truly what's helping us to move the dial. So thank you.
Councillor Herbert.
Thank you, Worship. I'm basically in the same line as Councillor Sands, Larry Baldwin Sands, that it'd be nice to have numbers, numbers posted, who to call, like Monday to Friday during the day, they're going to call the social service building, but at 9 o'clock on a Friday night, they throw tents up on your front of your house and you don't want them. You're automatically going to call the police, I would think, as happened with Councillor Clark, but it'd be nice to know the process on what numbers to call so people can have them. I don't know the social service number, and maybe I should, but I don't. And it just would be nice to have a set of numbers, who the process, do this, do this, do this, here are the numbers. So you have it would be out there for people to know who to call and not automatically call the police. I don't know what the police do when you call them, if they, I know we've discussed it before and where it's supposed to go, but anyway, that's just my same idea as Laurie Baldwin saying. So thank you.
Thank you. Peters.
Thanks, your worship, and Danielle, thanks for the report. When you state in the report that the unsheltered are the priority, are others then falling between the cracks? Are we focusing in on the unsheltered and others who may not be unsheltered, but who are in need are getting bumped down a waiting list? I have another question.
Please.
Thank you. Thank you, your worship, and through you to Councillor Peters. Thank you for the question. So I'm very happy to share with you that that is not the case in St. Thomas Elgin. Pardon me, that may very well be the case in other municipalities, but we have worked quite diligently across the spectrum of people experiencing homelessness to ensure that we're creating levers out of homelessness for all states of homelessness, including the level of acuity. So examples of that would be the supportive housing programs that we have in place and some of the services that we've brought right into our shelter in order to ensure that we're meeting the needs as best as we can in that area as well. Across the system, even though we're making headway, I think we all know that we still have our work ahead of us. And currently there is still more need than there is resource. But again, we're moving the dial on that. And I fully believe and I'm hopeful that St. Thomas will get to a place where their resources exceed the need and will be in a very different place.
Councillor
Great,
Peters.
thanks for hearing. I appreciate hearing that. On city lands, are we proactive or is it a complaint-driven process? So as an example, a parks employee driving a quad runner down the trail notices a tent. Do they report that someplace? Does a roads truck who's out and about and notices an encampment down at Athletic Park, are we waiting for a complaint to come in, or do our staff start things into the system?
Thank you, Councillor Peters. It's a great question. I appreciate the opportunity to provide more clarification on that. So our response is both proactive and reactive. So we do have a protocol in place when we receive a complaint or a concern that there's a report of someone experiencing unsheltered homelessness. In addition, we're on the streets every day. So that's done through our special constables with St. Thomas Police Services, as well as our outreach team that we've brought in-house with social services. So they're out connecting with folks every day, regardless of whether a report came in or not. And other participating service areas, like the example you provided with parks, if they come across someone, they will report that so we can initiate the responsive services to that person. The other thing that's quite helpful here in St. Thomas is that we know most people experiencing unsheltered homelessness. It's very rarely a new person that we're encountering. And because we have that existing relationship and because we've been persistent about people not being able to live on public land unsheltered, for the most part, folks already know what the expectation is. And when we begin engaging, they know it's towards solutions to have folks leave the area and access those supports.
Further questions or comments? Ms. Nielsen, first of all, thank you so much. Great report. Really tells us what we're doing and how it's being dealt with. Compare us to other communities. They have a similar protocol?
Thank you, Mayor Preston. That's a great question. I may be a bit biased, but I am tempted to say that you
I happen
can't
to be
compare
too.
us to other municipalities. I feel like we are leaps and bounds ahead of what a lot of Canadian communities are right now experiencing. So much of that has to do with the fact that we never pushed pause. We didn't push it throughout the pandemic. We didn't push it when other cities became cautious or nervous about the way that they were engaging with people living unsheltered. We've maintained that it's just not a dignified way or a safe way for anyone to be living regardless of their housing status. All of our supports and services are people-centered. Never once has anyone been yelled at or fined or arrested or found themselves in conflict. It's all driven by relationship and persistence and our ability to incorporate best practices that have been known to this sector for at least a decade. And what's different about what's happening in St. Thomas Elgin is that we're applying them all at the same time. We have a shared vision. We haven't sort of picked and chosen from a list of best practices. We've said we're doing it all. And we know that the solution to homelessness is supportive housing, and we've kept our foot on that pedal. So I would say that it's difficult to compare us to other municipalities.
Well, thank you. We keep getting calls from other municipalities saying, share the magic pixie dust with them, right? And we said it's hard work and it's starting early and not stopping. And that's, I thank this council for the work that it has done, and certainly your group as to protocols like this, so we know what to do when we run into what we don't want to have. We're not done. And you said it in your presentation, but we're a lot further along than most, and we certainly are closer to the end than we were just even 5 minutes ago. We continue to move forward on that Built to Zero. And I want to thank you and your team, and certainly thank this council too for the support that they've given on this project. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Preston and council.
Thanks. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried.
Your worship, unless the members have any further items under this committee, we'll now move into community engagement and services. The first item relates to an updated transfer of payment agreement for childcare funding. I have a motion that report SCSS 1124 relating to the updated transfer payment agreement for 2024, which includes additional funding, be received for information. Moved by Councillor Wookey, seconded by Councillor McCauley.
Questions or comments on the report? Jim, Councillor Herbert?
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is, I see that this agreement will be in effect for 5 years. So don't things change 2 or 3 years from now? Can we not reapply for funding and grants if we had to? But even this one will stick for 5 years according to the last statement?
I'm going to let Teresa handle that because I happen to know there's even more agreements coming as we're speaking. But this one was good news and thought we'd get it to you. Teresa, you're up.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you for the question, Councillor Herbert. Apologies for not being there in person, but I'm happy to answer the question. So we do not apply for these grants. These are directives from the ministry. So for sure, we just had a TPA, a transfer payment agreement, a few months ago, and this is yet a new one. So there are honestly very constant updates that are being given. So we most likely will be getting new TPAs in the very near future because things do change. So this is a great move with regard to increase in wages and support funding for childcare centers and professional development. And at this point, I don't know what is on the horizon, but I am confident that there will be additional funds coming our way for children's services and childcare.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark?
Thanks. I was just wondering if you could expand a little bit and talk about the startup grants.
So I would love to be able to answer that question, Councillor. However, we still are waiting for some further information with regard to startup grants. We were given from some general comments, but again, I cannot really provide any detailed information at this time, but happy to do so when that information is provided.
Further questions or comments? Well, thank you, Teresa. I know that you and I both went all the way to the top last Monday and asked the Prime Minister. I'm not sure we can go, we'll have to work our way down to there, from there to get the answer, I think, but that's, thank you for all you've done on this and on the file as it continues.
Thank you so much.
Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Your worship, unless there are any further items for this committee, we'll now move into infrastructure and civic operations. First item relates to 2024 Road Rehabilitation and Trails Program, the tender award. I have a motion that report ES 2624 relating to the 2024 Road Rehabilitation and Trails Program, tender 2024-09 award be received for information, and further the council award tender 2024-029 to Roebuck Contracting Limited in the amount of $483,415 excluding HST. Moved by Councillor Kohler, seconded by Councillor Wookey.
Questions or comments? Councillor Kohler.
Thanks. Like the report, but I have some questions because there's some other streets that aren't listed on here that I know staff are currently working with residents and that I would think would kind of fit into this type of work because it's not just regular maintenance that is required to be done. It looks like it's going to, like Young Street would be one where I think staff is working with a solution there, and I've talked to the residents in that area. And I was just wondering if, like, why that's not in here, or if there is a larger kind of area that would be taken care of maybe through the operating budget with that.
Through the mayor to Councillor Kohler, the streets that were identified were the streets that are a part of this tender package, or the streets that were identified during the budget cycle. We did receive some favorable pricing. So we are looking at other locations that we'll see if we can include in as part of the work. But at this point, we're just scoping that out right now.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I look forward to seeing when Young Street will hit this list.
Councillor Peters?
Thanks, Worship. How much should we be spending? I mean, maybe that's an open-ended question, but in my mind, we get more bang for our buck out of little projects like this than we do on a $5 million Kane Street rebuild. And I guess I'm trying to understand the balance. Like I think we can all name streets. I'll start with the one that I drive every day, John Street. It's in deplorable condition. It's taking a beating. Councillor Gibson, it goes there on uses that street on a regular basis. And I guess I look at how can we start to say, okay, look, John Street is 10 years away from a total rebuild. But how can we do a re-asphalting on a street like that, or Meada Street? It's another one that his worship has heard about probably for 5 years now. Yep. I don't know what the underground is like, but it just, and I don't like putting money into something and then saying, oh, well, in 2 years, we're going to rip it up. But if we're knowing it's going to be 10 years out that we're ever going to do anything, why can't we look at least doing the streets, if nothing else?
Kevin?
Through the mayor to Councillor Peters, to answer your first question, that is an open-ended question, and I don't know if you want to know the answer to that right now. Plus, I actually don't have that answer. The reason why I don't have that answer is we're going through that asset management application update right now. And so that process will then look at the underground, because we may not know all of the answers of the underground. So we don't get in that scenario where within 5 years, we're not seeing the full life of that investment we made. We want to make sure we avoid that, because that's not an efficient way to do business. So when we start looking at a coordinated corridor approach, that's when we'll be able to figure out, okay, these roads, we're not going to touch them in that time frame where we'll see the full benefit of that investment to just redo the road. We'll then have that grocery list. It'll likely continue to grow year after year, because we know that it's going to be difficult to reach sustainable levels of funding. And so by monitoring our roads to making sure we keep our level of service for our pavement condition index, for example, at a level that we deem as satisfactory, that's when we'll be able to determine what the price tag is on an annual basis.
I also agree, and Councillor Peters and I have certainly had this conversation. I don't want to be the guy they come to who we just paved their street, now we're ripping it up to do something under it. So all of these decisions have to be made with some of that in mind. But you're right, there's a couple of pretty rough streets out there, and we've been moving them around on our timing list. Keep going. This looks good. I love the maps that came with it today too. So, perfect. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Next item relates to pollution control plant optimization upgrades and aerated sludge tanks tender award. I have motion that report ES 3024 relating to pollution control plant optimization upgrades and aerated sludge tanks tender award 2024-001 be received for information, and for the council award tender 2024-001 to BGL Contractors Corporation in the amount of $11,374,736 excluding HST, and further the council authorized the use of an additional $2,366,781 from the sewer reserve towards this project. Moved by Counselor Baldwin Sands, seconded by Counselor Gibson.
Questions or comments? Counselor Baldwin Sands.
Thank you. I was hoping that we could hear from the director what the hope is. I know that the author of the report is not here, but hopefully we could hear from the director what the public could hope to achieve from this report. Thank you.
You tell us the great news that's going to happen because this contract was awarded?
Through the mayor, exactly. No, this project is a combination of this tender is a combination of two projects. One is the optimization of the pollution control plant, so that we can process more material in a more efficient way. And the second part is about odor control and enhancing odor control in the area. So both of these projects have been combined into this tender. Unfortunately, the results were a little bit larger than what we anticipated, but the lowest three did come in within 2.5% of each other. So I'm fairly confident that this is what the market price is.
Further questions? Counselor Herbert?
Thank you, Your Worship. I find this report always very interesting when we talk about the odor controls of the plant, but the part that really I'm not sure I quite understand who's under the background when you say you want to remove several bottlenecks and optimizing plant process, reduce sewage overflows during weather events. What happens on a sewage overflow? Like where does that's I just don't understand that.
Smart ass comment I'll leave out. Go ahead.
Through the mayor to Councillor Herbert, in an overflow situation, it's exactly that. The plant isn't able to handle the flows, so the CSO or the inline storage facility overflows and it flows into the environment, untreated. It's a situation that occurs in a lot of municipalities, but we are trying to reduce the amount of that occurring by going through this optimization process so that we can treat more of it to reduce the occurrence of overflows.
Counselor Clark?
Thank you. The winner of the tender, have they done work with us on this site in the past?
Through the mayor to Councillor Clerk, no.
Further questions or comments? Counselor Wookey?
Thanks, Your Worship. Mr. Dillebeck, I know that there may be people from the public saying overflows and all that kind of stuff. But what is the reporting process to the ministry when things like that happen? Like I know we know, but the public probably doesn't know how that's handled in terms of accounting for that. Thank you.
Yes, most certainly. Through the mayor to Councillor Wookey, every overflow event requires an extensive amount of testing and of the material that's being overflowed, as well as reporting to the ministry and the federal agency as well. So it doesn't go unchecked. And that's the reason why we had to implement a pollution control prevention plan to help try to reduce these pieces. That plan identified a lot of these bottlenecks, if you will, and we're moving forward on actioning those recommendations out of that plan right now.
Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, Kevin.
Next item relates to Center Street Comprehensive Review. I have a motion that report ES 3124 relating to the Center Street Comprehensive Review be received for information, and further the council endorse the always stop control policy included as attachment 1 to report ES 3124, and further the council authorize the permanent installation of an always stop control at the intersection of Center Street and Elgin Street and at the intersection of Center Street and Princess Avenue. And further, the council direct that a bylaw be prepared for its consideration to amend traffic and parking bylaw 45-89. Moved by Councillor Wookey, seconded by Councillor McCauley.
Questions or comments? Counselor Wookey?
Thanks, Your Worship. I had a great chat with Mr. Dillebeck on the phone today after reading the report, and he did a great job of clarifying a few changes that are being made within the policy. So I'm hoping Mr. Dillebeck can share that with folks in terms of how the process for determining what warrants a four-way stop has changed, both from the government side and from our policy side. Thank you.
All right, so a change in warrants.
Yes.
Mr. Dillbeck, please share with us.
Through the mayor to Councillor Wookie and all of council and the public. So the Ministry of Transportation has basically prescribed ways for us to do an always stop warrant analysis through the Ontario Traffic Manual, Book 5. And Book 5 was updated in 2021. When we were going through this comprehensive review process, staff started reaching out to some of our partners and colleagues in other municipalities, and we found that a lot of municipalities are not transitioning to the 2021 version of Book 5 just yet. This policy does do that. Transitions, so some of the advantages of doing that is that it's lowering what I feel is lowering the threshold in order to meet the criteria to install an all-way stop control. In addition to that, we found one other municipality doing something a little bit different, which we've adopted for our local context as well. And that's about pedestrian exposure. So if the warrants for a certain location, if the traffic volume at a location isn't warranted based on the 2021 version of Book 5, perhaps the pedestrian exposure index is, which is a statistical way of trying to protect those vulnerable road users. And it's used for PXOs, pedestrian crossings. So adopting that into this policy, when we do that, Princess Ave and Center Street becomes a warranted intersection. We looked back at some of the other intersections that council as the road authority had approved whenever that were technically not warranted based on the 2001 version of Book 5. But when we applied this policy, they are warranted. So I feel that this policy is kind of closing the gap between the technical aspect and the road authority's decision-making authority to narrow that gap between perception and technical warrant. So I think this is a good blend for public policy. And so that's what's before you this evening is that piece.
Councillor Kohler, then Councillor Gibson.
Thanks, just through you to the director. The collision data, I'm assuming that's all from the police association, because I, oddly enough, came upon an accident this weekend at one of the intersections that's not going to be signed. And according to the neighbors, there's plenty of accidents that happen at this intersection all the time, but it's certainly not in the data here. So just want to be able to communicate that back to them on how that's collected.
Certainly through the mayor to Councillor Kohler. So this report used last year's data. It didn't use the data from 2024. We get that at the end of the year from police services. But some of the collisions that occur, regardless of any intersection, are not included in the collision warrant. So if somebody rear ends somebody, an always stop control is not going to change that. Or if there's a single motor vehicle that's involved, an always stop control is not going to change that. What we do look for are incidents where there's a right angle. So like the one on this weekend at William and Center is one. Where that would be included in the collision warrant analysis, or where there's turning movement conflicts, where someone's trying to make a left-hand turn and isn't able to make it. So those are two of the collision types that we focus in on when we're looking at the collision warrant process.
Okay, Councillor Gibson.
So the collisions at the corner there, you're talking about someone not making the corner. I'm just wondering if that is related to on your figure number 5, when it comes to two-way cycling track. You indicated there's an option there of taking 18 parking spaces away due to those tight corners. Does this come back to us, or can we factor this in as our decision making tonight? Thank you.
Through the mayor to Councillor Gibson, I think what I'd like to share with you is a little bit at the bottom of page 2 of the report, where we looked at 6 years of collision data through the entire Center Street corridor. And one of the trends that we noticed is that the frequency of collisions occurring in the reconstructed portion of Center Street had significantly decreased compared to the portions that have not been reconstructed. So I would suggest that Center Street's on the docket for next year for in terms of reconstruction, that we go through that process in order to help help the issues that may be related to sightlines before we make any other types of decisions.
Thank you.
Counselor Herbert?
Thank you, Worship. What does it actually take to change things into a four-way stop or to make it safer? Because you said this is last year's data. So at the end of next year, because I know on this past weekend on William and Center, there was 2 bad accidents. Right? And I heard the one, I happened to stop at the one and he thought it was a four-way stop. So he stopped and started to go, he thought it was his turn and this car rammed him. But anyway, William and Center there's such a disconnect with Center Street and four-way stops. You got Princess and Center four-way, you go to the next one, it's not as four-way. Go to the next one, Elgin's a four-way, you go to the next one, it's a two-way. It'd be nice if there was consistency on all the stops, but I'm just saying, I don't know what it takes to make changes, but I saw the William one, there was 2 bad accidents there and anyway, I think the four-way stops on some of those would make a big difference. So just my opinion. Thank you.
Counselor Peters?
Thanks, Worship. To Kevin, you know, the issue of some of those intersections is pointed out about removing parking spots. I'm prepared to support removing some of these parking spots. Queen is a dangerous intersection to try and make a left turn to go eastbound onto Center Street off of Queen. Metcalf is the same. You know, Hinks isn't so bad. Southwick's not so bad, but Queen and Metcalf. So, you know, I would support staff taking a look at, we've got lots of public parking in those neighborhoods. And if we can improve sightlines, would go a long way. And as a driver who uses those streets regularly, I would appreciate it because I find them constantly inching out and then holding my breath and hoping I'm gonna make it.
Just go real fast. Thank you.
Just to that piece through the mayor to Councillor Peters, Queen Street, Metcalf, again, are in the to be reconstructed portions. So I feel that going through that reconstruction process is going to help improve these areas, especially with Elgin Street as well. That has a lot of accidents as well. So, and it's warranted based on collision, as you can see in the table. So I think that's probably our first step to seeing how that happens. And as you noted, Councillor Gibson, figure 5 is a little bit of a change in terms of the geometry for the cycle track to try and bring that stop bar a little bit closer to the intersection and test that out in this section to see if we can nail down a solution that works locally for St. Thomas.
Great. Go follow it up.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, I'm just going by experience because my husband, you know, the rule of thumb is you stop at the wide stop bar, then you move forward, right? It doesn't happen. I'm just saying.
Further questions or comments on the report? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Your worship, unless there are any further items for this committee, we'll now move into corporate governance and administration. The first item relates to Western University and the City of St. Thomas collaboration. I've motioned the report ID 2124 relating to the collaboration between Western University and the City of St. Thomas be received for information. Moved by Councillor Baldwin Sands, second by Councillor Gibson.
Questions or comments? Councillor Gibson, then Councillor Baldwin Sands.
Wow, what a great opportunity to put St. Thomas back on the map again. And, you know, and raise your children to go to school and learn a great career. And hopefully they'll stay this way for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baldwin Sands.
Thank you. I too am very excited to see this report. I really appreciate the research and development pieces that are being discussed, the opportunity for 3 Ps, public-private partnerships, the addition of opportunities that go beyond this report, the ability for us to educate and share what we are doing here in this community. And I also appreciate how it was acknowledged the staff that have been pulling this together and bringing it to council's attention. And I think I'm really anxious to see what they are going to do next because it's pretty exciting. Thank you.
Further discussion? I'm also very excited. For years, we've been kind of courting Western to be involved in St. Thomas. This is great to see us going out and finding some really good cooperative efforts. So perfect. Thank you. And further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Next item relates to the Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation loan application. I have a motion that report TR 0624 relating to the loan application be received for information, and further council approve the preparation of a bylaw to authorize a debenture borrowing limit of $17 million with the Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation for the construction of affordable housing and the Yarmouth Yards development. Moved by Counselor Wookey, seconded by Counselor Herbert.
Questions or comments? Counselor McCauley.
This information may be coming in a future report, but if I am a citizen reading this report and I see, those are large numbers, and they may not understand the process as what does this mean to me, as a resident, if I'm reading this report, what are the impacts to me?
Incredible increase in affordable housing and in industrial infrastructure. But I'll let the treasurer say what it means financially.
Thank you. Through you to council. At the bottom of the report, it states how much the carrying costs are for those debentures. So there will be an impact on taxes. The $10 million debenture is for our agreement with Central Elgin. And the affordable housing stuff it does take money to build affordable housing, and there is an impact on taxes, but I think overall the addition of more affordable housing will be a benefit for all the city.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. There's absolutely no doubt that this is, in my opinion, a good investment. But as I was saying, I just want to kind of put it into layman's terms. So thank you for clarifying what that would look like in terms of taxes. So we can expect taxes to be going up if we are tapping into this funding, correct? And is there, and I realize you may not be able to tell specifics, but when we talk about an increase to taxes, there's a kind of a number where we know it's going to be a 1 or 2 or 3%. So understanding the great value behind this, what could a taxpayer be looking at as an increase?
So with our levy, 1% of our levy is around 680,000. So that $10 million debenture is around 1% on taxes.
Thank you.
Mr. Treasurer, if I can help while we still have you though, but as each year has grown here and St. Thomas continues to grow in past and future revenue, some of this may very well be covered by the growth of the community along with increased taxes or instead of increased taxes.
Yeah, it's our growth numbers have been really good over the last few years, and it not necessarily going to be that impact, but it also assists in future growth. So a little small amount of short-term pain could bring a lot more gain in the future.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just surprised that it's all done as one motion. I understand the need for the Yarmouth Yards and that project we're all well aware of. I'm just kind of puzzled that kind of it's appearing before us that we're going to approve a debenture for $7 million for future affordable housing. I'd like to hear some comments about what those projects are going to look like and what their timelines are. And I wasn't aware that we were dealing with some of those ideas to the point where we need money.
Mr. Treasurer, if you'd like to, I can say that we put a great deal of this amount in this year's budget as for growth in housing. If we needed it, we would do this. And just last week, we talked about Eastwood housing, and that was $3 million, and that's a part of this too, I would think. You can correct me or add some more.
Thank you. So council has already committed approximately $6 million to affordable housing projects if they go. We're not necessarily going to borrow that money, but doing the debenture process takes quite a while and it's pretty involved. So it's best to lump stuff together. We don't necessarily have to borrow that money. We're just getting approval to do that. If we need that money, then we'll take it.
So what are those projects? And you mentioned one of them, the Eastwood. What are the rest?
Well, again, they were future supportive housing or seniors housing that we put in our budget without knowing which ones they may be. This council has talked about a couple of them, but until the project comes forward and asks for our share, then we didn't have to touch this money.
So how do we arrive at the 7 million? Like, why isn't it 9 or why isn't it 10? Like, or
That was the amount in the budget. It was kind of arbitrary, but that was the amount.
so I guess where I'm going with this is we've already committed 6. Is 7 enough? Like,
Well, the 6 we committed to was future looking. And certainly things like Eastwood that came up last week was kind of the future we were looking at. If somebody came to us and could give us a good deal on a great amount of affordable housing and we could contribute, that's where when we did budget this year, that's what we set aside. So you're right. The difference is between 6 and 7, right? That we had said in our budget. Am I losing you?
no. So why isn't the amount then what we budgeted for?
I'll ask the treasurer. The 7 million is what's in the budget to borrow. We could expect to have, I expect our commitments to be around 9 million in total. And we have an idea to raise another $2 million through a sale of a property. So we're hoping for that.
They'll all come to us to vote on as we do them, as we did last week. But as you say, doing a debenture in one big amount is a lot easier than us taking little bits as we need to. I guess that's what you and I have shared each other. Okay. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Unless there are any further items from the members under corporate governance and administration, council will now reconvene into regular session. I have a motion that the recommendations, directions, and actions of council and committee of the whole, as recorded in the minutes of this date, be confirmed, ratified, and adopted. Moved by Councillor Wookey, seconded by Councillor Clark.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
No reports of committees this evening. We now move into petitions and communications. An item of information from the Catfish Creek Conservation Authority regarding the authority's approved 2024 levy, which has been forwarded to the Treasury Department. Also included are the authority's 2023 audited financial statements. Next item, correspondence has been received from the Ministry for Seniors and Accessibility regarding Seniors Month in June 2024. Last item on the agenda is notice having been received from both the city and AECOM Canada Limited of a public information center relating to the water reclamation facility pumping station and Force Main Master Plan to be held on May 29th, 2024 from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the St. Thomas Memorial Auditorium on 80 Wilson Avenue. Your worship, unless there are any items of petition from members of council, we'll move into unfinished business of council. And seeing no items, we'll now move into new business of council.
Councillor Baldwin Sands, you're up.
Thank you. I have two items. For the Joint Health Recruitment Committee of St. Thomas and Elgin, in another week, we will be welcoming some medical students into our community. And I am pleased that on Monday, I will be doing a presentation to the students. On Tuesday, we will be showcasing some of the assets that we have in our community and topping that off with dinner down in Port Stanley. And then on Wednesday, we will be taking the group to the art gallery so that we can showcase what we do here for arts and culture. And we are still looking forward to having hamburgers as the meal for our Wednesday night activity. And again, I'd like to thank you for making that offer, because it was so well received last year when we were down at Dalewood Conservation Area for that event. And I do have a second item, if I may, please.
Well, thank you for that one. That's great. That
Thank you.
anything we can do to woo more physicians to our community, the better off. And thank you for your extra work on that.
Okay.
Second item.
Thank you. On Thursday, May 16th, I was able to go to Toronto to experience the Pan Am Sports Complex and attended the Canadian Olympic Trials for swimming. After all the building tours and all of the information was shared with all of the people involved, I was pleased to witness Summer McIntosh break the world record in the 400-meter individual event. It's called the 400-meter individual medley. I watched other swimmers also make the Canadian Olympic team by making their standards in the other events that were presented that night. In addition, Dan Thompson from Merthyr Pools, who extended that invitation, also said that he would be coming through our area on the 28th. And as the committee for the Community and Aquatic Facility, he has offered to help tour the facility and provide some expertise feedback on the Community Aquatic Facility that is currently in the planning stages at the committee level. Thank you.
Excellent. Further new business, Councillor Clark?
Just on that topic, I noted with interest that North Bay has just hired Ellis Don to be a select design builder for their new community center. And they've received 25.78 million from the feds for the Green and Inclusive Community Building Program. And they'll meet the zero carbon design standard. So it'd be interesting to maybe reach out to North Bay and the work that they're doing there, because they're being very proactive. They're similar to us, where they're a couple years out from deciding what they actually want and what they're going to do. But part of the idea was to hire a professional firm to help them with the process. And Ellis Don, as we know, is a Canada-wide business that looks at some of these large projects. So they're looking at early alignment on costs, scheduling, functional programs, kind of paving the way for council to select a preferred design concept. So Ellis Don is doing all that prelim work for them. And it might be interesting just to see whether or not that route is helpful on a way to move forward.
I like the thought. Can we just get their plans? No, I'm just.
Yeah.
Councillor Baldwin Sands.
Thank you for that update. And just so everyone knows, that is actually something that was discussed.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Anything else under new business? This Saturday is the Whistle Stop Bicycle Festival taking place at Westlake Evans Park, right behind us here. Most of the day, starting early or late in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning, I believe, but wanted to give everybody notice that there'll be a lot of bicycles in the area of City Hall on Saturday. Please come, bring your bike and come down, or just come down to watch. Anything else under new business? Moving on.
Next, we move into bylaws. I have a motion that leave be granted to bring in the bylaws. Moved by Councillor Peters, second by Councillor Kohler.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
I have a motion by Councillor Peters, second by Councillor Kohler, that the bylaws be now read a first time, referred to council and committee of the whole, and read a second time.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
First bylaw, please.
First bylaw is a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting held on May 21st, 2024.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Next bylaw, please.
Second bylaw is a bylaw to amend bylaw 50-88, being the zoning bylaw for the city of St. Thomas. This is in order to comply with an order from the Ontario Land Tribunal for the property at 30 South Edgeware Road.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. That's noted. Thank you.
Third bylaw is a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute and affix the seal of the corporation to a certain agreement between the city and 100057633 Ontario Incorporated. This relates to a residential loan agreement under the Community Improvement Program for the property at 200 Center Street.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Next bylaw, please.
Fourth bylaw is a bylaw to approve the submission of an application to the Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation for the long-term financing of certain capital works of the city of St. Thomas and to authorize the entering into of a rate offer letter agreement pursuant to which the municipality will issue debentures to the OILC. This relates to Yarmouth Yards Development and affordable housing.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Next bylaw.
Fifth and final bylaw is a bylaw to amend bylaw 9797, being a bylaw to regulate the discharge and sale of fireworks. This relates to permitted discharge dates.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. I rise and report the successful passing of 5 bylaws.
Great.
I have a motion by Counselor Peters, seconded by Counselor Kohler, that the report of council and committee of the whole on the 5 bylaws be received and adopted. The same be read a third time and gross, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed and numbered.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Next order of business is public notice. 2 notices this evening. The first notice is hereby provided that the St. Thomas Economic Development Corporation intends to introduce a report at the June 3rd, 2024 council meeting requesting approval of an unbudgeted operating budget expenditure relating to funding for a joint downtown development board and economic development corporation downtown business advisor position. The second, Corporation of the City of St. Thomas hereby provides notice of its intention to adopt bylaws to establish 2024 property tax ratios and property rates at its meeting to be held on Monday, June the 10th at 5 p.m. The meeting will be available to the public either in person or on Zoom and can be accessed through a link on the city's website. No notices of motion this evening. Your worship, we have concluded all matters before council. There is no closed session this evening. At this time, I have a motion for adjournment. A move by Counselor Baldwin Sands, seconded by Counselor McCauley.
Discussion or comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. We are